Many of you have been reaching out to ask about the kind of techniques and practices that you can put into place in order to deal with your high sensitivity and help resolve your trauma. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today I intend to provide a tentative list of the modalities that I'm familiar with and often put into practice in order to deal with these situations. Before I get started with the actual list of practices, techniques, I would like to start by providing a little bit of guidance and context on how to use such a list and how to engage in the kind of work that will be very challenging. Very often when the question is asked about what is the technique or can you give me the practice, I read a little bit between the lines that the spirit in which the question being asked is one of trying to hack or get a quick fix on the situation. And therefore, I would like to instill the idea that the first practice or the first modality that you should consider is the one of taking this endeavor very, very seriously. This is a monumental task that is ahead of you. If you are highly sensitive or if you have deep trauma to resolve, you stack the odds against you very dramatically if you try to hack it, wing it, or make it into a do-it-yourself job, because some of these practices are incredibly nuanced, and knowing how to do them correctly, when to apply them, when to stop, and which ones can be counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve is very, very important, and it requires a body of knowledge and a lot of underlying understanding of what it is that you're trying to do, both on the level of psychology, energetics, physiology. And without these understandings at hand, you could spend a lot of time going into practices that are irrelevant, potentially counterproductive, and sometimes even dangerous. So there's no real reason why not to reach out to someone who can really guide you in how to do this properly and how to tailor a program of practices and techniques that are really customized to the situation that you're going through, the type of individual that you are. So this is a word of caution to really invite you to take the endeavor very seriously. This is not a light thing, is not some sort of soundbite type of solution that would get you a quick fix, because no such thing is on offer. Anyone who is preaching just disappear for a month and then come back being a complete stoic, or this is the one thing that will solve all your problems type of advice is fairly misguided, and you could end up either disappointed or re-traumatized, for example. So that's just a word of caution, and to really invite you to take this as seriously as you possibly can, and to make you aware that you will have to invest likely an enormous amount of time, energy, and resources in making this work for you properly, that you should prepare for that and be willing to invest in what is, after all, the transformation of your very life, which is not something that will come easy or cheap. And I'm not just talking in monetary terms, but also in how confronting the process is and how much energy and time it requires. So having said that, I have tried to, or rather will try to organize the advice into some discrete buckets that might make it easier to understand. And I would like to always start with a bucket that I would call practices that are good for kind of self-regulating and stabilizing your nervous system. Those practices are a little bit on the tactical side of things. Some of them are fairly mundane and very physical in nature, because we are really trying to deal with something that is fairly basic and very tangible. So Starting with the most mundane ones to really get them out of the way as quickly as possible, and yet they are still important. Making sure that you get very decent sleep and that your evening routine is sort of more on the relaxed side of things instead of Googling yourself to sleep is critical. Making sure that you are not doing substances that are amping you up or dysregulating you, including drugs, but also things like caffeine is also very important. You want to make sure that your lifestyle patterns exclude contact with people who trigger you because they are either the wrong kind of company or just toxic individuals, things of that kind. So you need to be nourished by your environment, and you want to, in addition to that, start implementing things such as nootropics that might help you regulate. Some of these are easy to get by, such as lion's mane and ashwagandha, or magnesium, for example. Taking magnesium baths, very effective on many levels. And if your level of dysregulation is very high and you have a high degree of trauma, then I would say don't try to fix this on your own. Go to a specialist and see if, at least in the short term, you are willing and able to get properly medicated so that your nervous system can be can sort of find ground and stabilize itself. This is not something we want to become dependent on. Medication and neurotropics are not a solution for high degrees of sensitivity and trauma, but you need to be able to stabilize yourself. On the level of practices, the quintessential practice for self-regulation is learning how to have a correct posture, and on the back of that, learning how to stabilize your breath. And this is a practice that takes a while to learn properly. It requires really good instruction, but stabilizing the breath is absolutely crucial when it comes to the stabilizing practices for your nervous system. In addition to that, there might be additional practices such as humming and shaking, which help you give a little bit of vibration and loosening tension in the nervous system. And if you're going to do sports, then you definitely don't want to amp yourself up or put more stress onto your system, but rather do things that are semi-vigorous, but at the same time that don't involve adding more contraction and stress to your system, but rather that are loosening and invigorating, but also relaxing. We have then the bucket about integration. Integration is a huge topic, but the main integration that we're talking about is within different parts of your nervous system and the integration in mind and body, which is essentially what we call embodiment. When it comes to practices of embodiment, you have a few practices that are very powerful, and you have a bunch of other activities that can sort of embody you in a sort of by the way type of manner. But you want to go for embodiment practices that are very focused and substantial and that really do a rich degree of embodiment in as short time as possible. Regular sports will not do this for you. Walking barefoot will not do this for you. These are, nice things that help, but strong embodiment practices will include things like standing qigong, the practice of tai chi, also regular qigong practice of the type that is grounding and regulating, as opposed to qigong for energy or martial purposes, and perhaps yin yoga, but in my personal opinion, you want to stay away from hatha yoga and kundalini type of yoga, because this will only dysregulate you more. It will make you more electric and make your energy shoot upwards, when in reality what you want is the type of embodiment that fills you from the ground up. So you want to do practices that ground your energy, and that is the kind of embodiment that you want to do. Let me see if I'm missing anything crucial on embodiment. I think that's the main part of it. There is an embodiment practice that starts already to go a little bit more into the mental practices type of things, which is the performing body scans with your mind. Body scans are deeply embodying, but you need to have, as with everything that I've just mentioned, very good instruction, and there's a lot of detail that goes into how to do a proper body scan, so that with that you would have a certain toolkit that can help you embody in a very effective type of way. If we have covered embodiment, we can go into practices that are a little bit more mental. So mental practices are there so that your mind is stable and aware enough to empower some of the other practices that I mentioned before, such as breath work and embodiment. When your mind is unstable and your levels of awareness are low, chances are that the effectiveness with which you approach some of these other practices is also going to be low. At the same time, the ability to focus, the ability for the mind to essentially be present and stay with one area of experience in a very stable type of way has a host of benefits in and of itself. So without talking necessarily about meditation proper, which is a very specific thing, we can call it that, you can do meditative types of practice or mental training around training your focus, training your awareness, and training your degree of presence with your sensory experience. There's a myriad of practices that are available to do that, but just to mention a few, focus on the breath is the quintessential focusing meditation, and you also have open awareness or abiding practice to train general presence and equanimity. When combined with the right posture, breath, these practices become very, very complete, and actually they all start to stack up and become a single thing at some point. But in the beginning, it's very good to train them as discrete pillars of your self-cultivation and regulation disciplines. We also have techniques or practices or modalities, if you will, that are purely mental in the more analytical sense of the word. There you would have dialectic behavior therapy, for example, as really talk therapy that can be highly transformative. You have Jungian type of therapy that would make you acquainted with the type of archetypal patterns that you are acting out and help you therefore clarify them and more easily become acquainted with things that you need to work on in your attitude towards things, and also develop what I call an archetypal or a positive narrative about the kind of work that you're engaging in and the kind of transformation journey that you're in. And you would have also just general counseling and advice on how to put routines and behaviors in place that make you generally more effective at the basic elements of life around your health, your relationships, and your finances, so that these things are not working against you, so that they are nourishing you, sustaining you, and that you are generally just effective, because that tends to have, of course, an effect on your mood and will also help with your self-regulation. You can do a lot of self-regulation practices, but if you're worrying about money or health or things like that, then it's like you're swimming against the current. So these basic aspects need to be worked on. I would never discourage anyone from doing that kind of talk therapy for whatever it's worth to help you on that level. It is likely not to be able to help you on things that are very somatic, neurological, and energetic in nature. So the rest of the work also needs to be done. And you need to watch out for the tendency to become too analytical, or the idea that if you only understand your problems, that somehow already does the job of transformation, which is why I started really with the very mundane physical stuff, went into embodiment and a little bit more energetic type of work, meditative disciplines, and now I'm talking about the more analytical and narrative-based type of modalities that you can engage in. Throughout all of this, you need to keep in mind that trauma release and resolution is a thing in and of itself and has its own modalities and needs to be dealt with, I would not say separately from all of this, but definitely as something that is not necessarily resolved by any of the things that I just mentioned now. Because many of these practices, yes, will start to bring things to the surface, potentially even trauma. And if you do them regularly for a long time, you will inevitably end up resolving many, if not all, your trauma. But if you are dealing with serious cptsd or trauma of some nature, or other types of issues such as depression or whatever, then you need to target that specifically, and you need to have specialized type of modalities to help you with that. I've mentioned in the past the types of modalities that are out there for the resolution of trauma. Some are by the use of psychedelics, which can be very effective if guided by someone who is a professional facilitator. You can also use talk and introspective therapy if you are already open enough and stable enough so that this can be in and of itself quite effective. You can make use of body release and bodily therapies for trauma, and you can make use also of breath work, which is specifically designed to lower your trauma inhibitions, amp up your somatics, and therefore help you release trauma very effectively. Release of trauma can be highly destabilizing. Once you have come in touch with parts of your neurology that had been shut away for a long time, you can feel very exposed. And in order to deal with these higher levels of exposure and openness, the embodying and stabilizing practices that I mentioned at the start of the video are absolutely crucial, in that they can really carry you and ground you and make you feel like you can contain the new levels of openness, exposure, and experience that you are all of a sudden feeling once again. So that all of these things play out in a complementary way. You will have noticed by now that my message at the start of the video about taking this work very seriously, and that the fact that it's a monumental task, is to do with the fact that you are addressing every level of yourself as an individual, from the really physical and somatic to the more neurological, energetic, to the mental type of work, to the analytical type of work, and surrounding it all by an environment that is nourishing and protective for the kind of growth that you are trying to do, because you're going to need a kind of cocoon in which this transformation can happen. And it's no short of an alchemical metamorphosis that you're going to go through, touching very, very deep aspects of yourself, the very core of what you are. So with that said, that is the summary of the modalities and practices that I'm aware of. I know that this is not an exhaustive list. Very often I see comments in my videos of people mentioning authors or modalities that I'm completely not familiar with, because there is a lot out there. But since I get asked very often, I thought I would share this list, and hopefully it will make you familiar with what it is that we're talking about. And once again, take the caveat at the start, which is that this is not something that you just want to wing or hack or try to do on your own in a random or I would say haphazard type of way. This is very deep and fundamental and confronting, substantial and energy draining kind of work. So you are better off seeking good help and making sure that you are guided in your journey, and it's going to make a transformation that you cannot possibly imagine when you set out to do so. I'm very curious about your comments about this one, and so do share them in the comment section. And as usual, if you think that this content is valuable, then others may also benefit from it, in which case your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the channel far more available to others, and it's also very motivating to me. and I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And until then, cheerio. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.